right now.
I love it when you record for posterity or infamously. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm doing, as Tom said, a little bit different twist dive on transition options, in part because when I do a search for a CEO, sometimes, not always, not surprisingly, the owners have a little bit of hesitancy and uncertainty. So before I go through a whole search process with them, developing their profile, developing a candidate profile, etc., I like to step back a little bit and make sure there's more certainty in the personal emotional side. So this is what I'm going to be looking at this afternoon very briefly. And Tom has the slides to send out to you, but certainly as we go through this, you will see, I'm sure, some similarities. So what I look at when I'm thinking about the best new owner for a company and an executive search is I'm asking these questions. So who's going to be that best new owner? And maybe they've got someone in mind to take over, but they haven't asked him or her. And they may have no idea or how to find the person. So they may make a simple assumption that they have to sell their company to somebody else. And perhaps that best candidate is someone in the family or amongst their employees. It depends. And then they've got people in their company that I've had that in the family, but they have absolutely no interest in taking over grandpa and dad's company because they've got their own career and their own lives. So maybe there's no one in the company to take over. So what I ask them is, what are your options? So this is what I look at with them. I explore 10 different options that they may not have considered, including hiring a CEO. I try to get new insights about their plans for new ownership. So it's a Q&A process. Sometimes, not always, I found that, well, we want to do an executive search, but as they go through the discussion with me, maybe you're right. Maybe I ought to sell it and hook me up with someone who can do that. So it's important for me to know going into this that I'm going to have some level of certainty with the owner or owners, closely held, the family owned, because I want to make sure they're making the right decisions for themselves and they're not wasting their time or my time and money as well. So it's a transition. And what I look at with them is personal outcome goals for the company. If they've defined them, usually they don't. And more often than not, they have not even addressed their personal outcome goals. They just don't have a clue. And then there's a legacy aspect of it. Do they want their company to continue? Are they okay with it being bought out by another company, a merger? It depends. And that's why I look at the transition analysis to look at what can be considered. So I've always found that there's at least 10 options to consider, and you may know more, but these are the ones I've always looked at. So as you're running down the list, selling that company to partners, other owners, family members, key employees. Number 4 can take a couple of different options. And we've had presentations in Tom's group in the past about, employee stock ownership, name them, selling the company directly to an outside buyer, using a broker or intermediary to sell your company to an outside buyer. And then you've got the last 4. The last one is usually not desirable. But increasingly down here on the Cape, I've been told and seen that companies just shut the doors. They don't want, and it's part of it's a COVID reaction, but they liquidate. So there's, the one I work on is number 9, hiring CEO, COO. But I like to talk to the owners about the different options, and I like to help them define some personal goals, some emotional goals, so that I can get a little bit better certainty with them so that it's more productive. So I'm looking at asking owners objective issues, personal, emotional issues, oftentimes aren't objective, but I try to get them there through a series of exercises and try to find out for them who that best new owner might be and which option's the best. So I'm always asking them, is this option, say out of the 10, a feasible possibility for me? And you know, someone said to me, Warren, it's counterintuitive. You know, you're focusing on executive search. Well, yeah, I am. But I think it's important for the owner to be fully committed to that search option just so they don't back out. Similarly, if they decide they want to sell their company and use an intermediary to do it, we want to make sure that they're not spinning the wheels for the intermediary, because it's a lot of time and money that folks are invested in helping these owners be successful in achieving their goals. So the transition analysis really is geared to make sure the owners are aware of their options, to, as objectively as possible through the exercises I use with them, consider the feasibility of each of those options, but I need to get them to clarify their needs and goals. Certainly there's a risk. They may tell me they don't want to go through the search process. That's okay for me. You know, they've spent a little bit of money engaging me up front, but if they're making a good decision for themselves as owners and their company, that's the important key. And if I can make a referral to someone based on that, I'm more than happy to do so, because I really don't want to go down the rabbit hole with them for the wrong purpose. So key points to discuss when I'm talking with owners on that transition analysis is their time frame for leaving. And when I'm doing a search, I'm usually looking at getting them to think about a 3, possibly a 5-year time frame. The ability of that new owner to run the company successfully, that new owner's ability to meet their personal business and legacy goals, as well as the existing owner's personal business and legacy goals. And then what are some of the contingencies for a potential owner? And last but not least, what are all the emotional issues related to this? And I'm sure those of you who have dealt with business transactions and business owners, those emotional issues often take the forefront and complicate the process of transitioning, whatever that transition may be. In my instance, it's doing a search. And, you know, I've had recently people I've been working with that just got all bollocksed up about wanting to do a search. And they went back and said, well, we need to do a more thorough transition. Well, you know, you're half a way through the search process. Well, but yeah, now I'm not certain what I want to do. I've been talking to my neighbor, or I've been talking to my attorney, or I've been talking to my best friend who just recently sold their company. Maybe that's a great option I should consider. So you can see how easy that rabbit hole could get opened up. And you need to make sure you're doing the right thing up front for them and for yourselves. So one of the things I do not include, because there's other experts out there, is the financial aspects of the business transition process. So company valuation, tax issues, financing terms, etc. That is not my ball of wax. And as we go through that process, I'm referring those owners to experts in that field. So ending that transition analysis and moving to the search process, some of the key questions: what options have been eliminated? Receive the maybe, receive the yes. And based on those discussions and those options, if they say it's okay to move onto a search process, I know there's more certainty and there's more clarity for the reasons for that. And I get them to write them down. I get them to discuss them with me. If it's a family, the other family members. If there's an executive team, the other members of the executive team, depending on what the owner or owners believe is most important. So that's the process I use, good, bad, or indifferent. It takes a little bit more time up front, but it helps me to make sure that the owner or owners are committed to an executive search process. So with that, Tom, I will take questions.
Excellent, Warren. Let me just stop the recording here. Hold on one sec.